Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Mic Drop with me, Mike Turner, our Director of Development and Integration here at Gap Relief, where I get to interview and chat with our service providers and partners here in the Gap Relief ecosystem to kind of just draw out a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and how we partake in our community. I'm joined today by the wonderful co-founder, co-executive director, Megan Taylor, specifically in her capacity as program director for our T.I.E.R.S program, serving school systems. Welcome back to the show, Megan.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Glad to be here.
Let's just jump off a little bit. We'll set some stage. Why don't you tell us what's T.I.E.R.S? How do we help with schools? Give me that right out the gate.
Yeah. So T.I.E.R.S, it stands for Trauma Informed.
Is it like tears, like I'm crying?
We try. I mean, we try to prevent that, but T.I.E.R.S can be a part of healing.
So it's an acronym, right?
It's an acronym.
It stands for.
Yep, Trauma Informed Educators Reaching Students.
Love that. So T.I.E.R.S. There's not actually, well, there's sometimes there's some real tears, but okay. So we're doing work in the schools. I love that. So you're working like most of the day in that capacity with teachers. Do you ever get concerned they're like judging your work, like your lesson plan? Like you walk in and you're like, man, these people make lesson plans for a living.
I mean, there's some reality to that, man.
How?
Where are my learning intentions and my success criteria?
Have you gotten a gold star from anybody
things,
yet? Has anyone given you a gold star?
I haven't gotten a gold star.
Well, maybe just a sticker.
A sticker. A sticker.
You should ask for a report card.
Band-Aids. Yeah.
Now, I'm thinking like school's got to be a really challenging system. I'm trying to think about like, I'm going to practice mindfulness while 20 screaming kids are pelting me with glue sticks and rubber bands.
You're not wrong. I mean, think about like many of us that are parents, right? You get like a couple of your kids and then multiply that
10.
by 4, 5, 6. And that's kind of what you have in a kindergarten classroom these days.
That is a wild scenario. And it helps me start getting into the space a little bit. But I want to try on kind of the first and maybe consistent question I get is, when we tell people about the work we do with law enforcement, I get a lot of head nods. That makes sense. And other nonprofit sectors, children's advocacy, just some challenging stories in our communities. I get a lot of head nods. And then I say teachers. Every once in a while, I'll get somebody like, teachers, tell me more about that. Like, how does that flow into the group? And, it just reminds me that sometimes people don't always think about our teachers as undergoing a significant amount of trauma impact in the work they do. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there are two things that kind of come to mind for me there. One, when I think teachers across all the different sectors we serve, I see them truly on the front lines of the next generation. And so when you look at big picture, like how do we shift a community? How do we shift our resilience? How do you shift pain, stress, trauma impact community-wide? Like looking at the next generation is huge. And so like if the next generation of kids is more resilient and are handed things that can help with their resiliency and their care, like that can continue to project forward, and that shifts our community radically in the future. Cool. So that being one piece of it. And then second to that, I think just as more and more of the kids in our community are exposed to trauma, have experienced adversity, you even think of things like COVID, but also just poverty and the difficulties that our community faces. They bring those things with them into the classroom, which really can inhibit their ability to learn and be able to continue to grow academically, which then impacts our community in the future as well. But what happens in those spaces is you have, 25 kids that show up that all have their own unique story, their own unique background, their nervous systems that have been impacted by their story. And teachers are interacting with that day in and day out and trying to progress them as learners while also trying to care for them. And in reality, like our kids spend more time at school than they do at home for a good chunk of the year. And so equipping those that are engaging with them can really make a difference, not only now, but as they continue to project into the future.
Yeah.
So teachers are engaging that stress and that trauma on a daily basis at much higher rates than I think the majority of our community is probably aware of.
That's really good. And I think, again, continuing to paint the picture of exactly what it is that we do, specifically in T.I.E.R.S or otherwise with our teacher sector and community. I can make sense that probably, you know, if there's a teacher that just needs some one-on-one processing time, maybe they're doing a one-on-one therapy session, we can support them in that way. But you've also been on the show before talking through how we support systems. Can you give us some perspective on like what does it actually look like to support a system in the school sector? What are we trying to, what does a resilient school system sound like in the case of what you just shared?
Yeah. So something that we see within schools often, you know, is that, I mean, their primary purpose is for the education of the children in the next generation. But when you have a kid step into a school building or a staff member that steps into a school building, it's not just their brain that steps into that. It's all of them. It's their heart, soul, mind, and body. And so recognizing that all of those things are impacted by their daily experiences. And so when you have a school system that begins to look at resilience, like it's looking at how do we care for not just the mind and the academic part of a child, but also their heart, their soul, their identity, who they are, because those things will not only unlock the academic part of them, but it also allows them just to grow as humans. And so I think a resilient system also has their eyes not only on the children, but also on the staff that are entering into that space.
Very cool. And the work y'all are doing with T.I.E.R.S, like what are some practical ways that comes to life?
Yeah, absolutely. So we spend a lot of times working with teachers, and some of that looks like the one-on-one space that you mentioned, but a lot of that also we spend some time in looking at, hey, how can you build your classroom in a way that creates felt safety for kids so that they come in, maybe they're coming from an environment that's crazy, that's stressful at home, but they come in and they can feel safe and connected to in the classroom, and so they're able to learn. We spend time with them looking at even what do their staff meetings look like? Like how do they have connection points with each other in those staff meetings that allow them to move through some of the stress that they're engaging so it's not building up inside of the staff members, because we see teacher burnout is higher now than it has ever been, is what research and statistics are showing. And so we want to hand them practical resources and training experiences that we have or consultation experiences we have with them that they can take back and use in their classrooms daily, whether that's for themselves and their own resilience or whether that's helping their students understand how to regulate what's happening in their body or in their heart or in their emotions as they go throughout the school day.
Yeah, I love that. I feel it reminds me of a previous conversation we had where you shared, you know, if you get stung by a bee, your body's going to react and you could wish it away as much as you want, but you're still going to get that welt on your arm.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of the same reality of if 20 kids are bringing in their struggles and challenges into a classroom, we can try to close our eyes to that or just focus on behavior management. But the reality is that stuff is there. We have to create a system that knows how to receive it because you got to. It's coming whether you like it or not. You can either have it hit you in the face or catch it in a soft catcher's mitt. But you know, I love the idea of helping equip our school systems to deal with the reality of what is, and then better equip our, you know, our teachers and administrative staff to have that longevity, have that resilience in doing what they set out to do, which is take care of our kids and the school systems. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. What would be your parting words to our teachers out there, the people, you know, you're serving and working alongside as you've worked with them and watched them? What message would you want to share with them?
Yeah. I think that what my heart would want to say to the teachers in our community is that we see you. Just this sense of, I feel like so much of the work they do goes unnoticed or unseen, or maybe the community at large, we don't always, and I didn't know until I stepped more into that world, but the reality of what they're engaging day in and day out. And so they really are on the front lines of championing our community in so many ways. And so like I want them to know we're thankful for that. And we value that. And I don't want them to feel like they have to be in those spaces alone. Yeah,
that's really beautiful. Big hearts and hard workers for sure. Well, thank you for the time on the show today, Megan. We really appreciate it. And thank you for all the work you're doing to serve our NWA teachers.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. If you are a local teacher or a teacher across the U.S. and you're interested in what we're talking about and you're thinking, man, I sure think that my school system could benefit from that work, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out to us at gaprelief.com or find us on social media, and we would love to continue the conversation. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in today, and we'll catch you next time.